In Kentucky, we don't just take chances, we bet big. This January, I'm sitting down with 4 Kentuckians who made 4 bold moves and asking one question: what was the biggest bet that you ever made on yourself? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Town & Country Ford. So wherever life's adventures may lead you, Town & Country Ford is along for the ride. It's just not something that I think a lot of kids think of.
I had no idea. Like, the world was wide open to me when I was finishing high school.
And so you went to the University of Louisville, studying chemical engineering. That's hard.
To encourage me to raise my hand for opportunities that are not typically just the lady job.
One way that you really have brought people to the table and made sure that underrepresented communities have a voice in this industry is my very first guest for this new podcast season is someone that has rewritten everything about what it means with leadership in bourbon. Marianne Eaves was the first female master distiller since Prohibition that we've ever seen in Kentucky. And hers is a story not only of saying yes to the right choices, it's saying no when it didn't feel right and taking the craziest turns in life because she knows that she's taking a risk and a bet on herself. Marianne, it's so exciting to have you here. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this, my first one.
Thank you, Claudia. Of course, I'm going to say yes to you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Your story is so inspiring, and I am always inspired by people going back to their childhood. And that I'm fascinated by what started it all. You grew up in Chattanooga, or born in Chattanooga, raised in Kentucky. What was young Marianne like?
Young Marianne, very creative, very quiet. If there was anything that people always said about me, it was that, very shy, very quiet. My mom used to characterize me as being very careful. But I've come to see that a little different light as I've grown up. She has a great story of me when I was a toddler. We were at church one Sunday, and I escaped the church. And I was
Marianne's on the run in church. Watch out!
On Hurstbourne Lane. I'm by myself walking down the side of Hurstbourne Lane. 6 lanes of traffic or whatever it is. My mom panics. She's running after me, and by the time she finds me, there's a police officer that's sitting there next to me. He's out of his patrol car, trying to get me in there, and I'm just keep saying no. But mom was like, "You were so careful to not get in the car with him." But I was like, first off, I escaped church to go on an adventure. I was looking for something. So I just see it in a different way.
You were always seeking adventure in your life, which seems so perfect for what your life has turned out to be. At an early age, were you interested in things that other girls were interested in, or did your mom look at you and go, "Yeah, Marianne, she walks to the beat of her own drum. She does, her interests are all over the place."
That's a great question. I think that my mom would have definitely seen that I wasn't like everybody else. But being so internal, I think it was hard to get out of me. What do you want to do? What do you want to be? What are you interested in? I just kind of went along with the crowd. I did Girl Scouts. I wouldn't say I was necessarily a girly girl. I did auto shop in high school.
What?
Yeah, and I loved it. I got to bring in my own car and work on things, rebuilt a carburetor, replaced my starter, You
were all into cars.
I was all into the mechanics of it. I think that's really what got me excited, taking things apart, putting them back together, making it work.
What did your fellow students think of that? Probably likely all guys, right?
Mostly guys. Yep. There were a couple other women in the auto shop class with me, but it's interesting because that's the Oldham County Career Center. So it's kids from all 3 of the high schools at the time were going to the Career Center for half the day. So it got me out of regular class, but yeah.
At that early stage, did you think, yeah, this is what I want to do? I want to be in cars for the rest of my life.
I really thought, I would be. I actually went to go tour a couple of those vocational schools to be a diesel mechanic. Eventually decided against it. I had no idea. The world was wide open to me when I was finishing high school, didn't know what I wanted to do. And then eventually I just decided not to do that. I helped my mom open a business in downtown LaGrange and took a 1.5 years off before pursuing the degree.
And so you went to the University of Louisville, studying chemical engineering.
Yes.
That's hard. That's hard. And so from that love of automobiles and building things to chemical engineering. I mean, maybe kind of the same. You're building blocks of life, I guess you will. But what was it about chemical engineering that really attracted you to that? And you're like, I want to make a career in this, whatever it is.
The honest answer, I had not even considered chemical engineering. My dad. So
don't just tell me like it came easy for you.
No.
This is
no.
like chemical engineering.
They basically gave me the degree. No, so I'm one of three. I'm the middle child. I have an older brother and a younger sister. My sister is a baby. She would hate for me to say this to everybody, but she really was babied. She got everything that she ever asked for. So it was actually good. It was beneficial to the rest of us that she started in college first. So I had taken that time off to help my mom open a business. My dad, because my sister started first, he was like, okay, clearly I'm going to pay for your school. Where do you want to go? And she chose U of L. And so when I was ready to go, he said, if you go to U of L and you pick a degree that you can make like a nice earning from, I'll pay for your school also. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, what is that? What's the requirement of like what I need to pick? So he started sending me lists of like top pay out of like right out of college kind of lists, and chemical engineering is pretty consistently in the top one or two. So that's what got me interested in it. And then like learning what chemical engineers do, it's all over the place: peanut butter, cosmetics, fuel, bourbon. And I was really interested in the renewable energy aspect. So I was like, this is my chance to save the world. I was vegetarian, I just wanted to contribute to the longevity of the earth. And I don't know, maybe I still am.
Not up there is like booze taster. They don't have that like in any course catalog. Like, what do you want to do? I want to be a booze taster, a booze creator. It's just not something that I think a lot of kids think of. How did that begin to cross your path as, well, this is curious. What do you mean I can have a career in it?
Well, it really wasn't until I started interviewing for internships through the chemical engineering program. So I know I'm a natural introvert. I was like, I need to work on my interview skills. So I'm just going to say yes. I'm going to take interviews for whoever is interested in hiring me. So I interviewed at 7 or 8 different places. Soy protein extraction, roof adhesives. And then the last 2 that I did was renewable energy research, which is what I really thought I wanted to do in Lexington. And then internship working for Brown-Forman here in Louisville.
One of the biggest names in bourbon in the entire world.
Yeah, exactly.
And they say, Marianne, we'd love for you to come do an internship with us.
Yes.
At the time, did you realize kind of how big of a name they were and continue to be?
My mom pointed that out to me. She said, you might not stay with it, but at least it's good for your resume. And I knew how many people they employ. I was aware of the company. And then, of course, being a non-traditional college kid. So I was 21 when I started my internship at Brown-Forman, which is uncommon. Most college kids are underage when they start their first internship. So I was like, I get to make alcohol and I get to drink it.
And I think that's what most people think about bourbon. They think, oh, you're sipping on alcohol you're drinking all day long. You're drinking bourbon, best brands in the country. And it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. And I think it's a little bit more, not a little, a lot more technical than people could ever realize.
100%.
So
yes.
Did you choose bourbon or did the bourbon biz sneak up on you?
It definitely snuck up on me. I didn't know that I was going to fall in love with it like I did. And it really was through the science, the chemistry, the engineering of it, being in those plants. Like I feel weird, like driving down a highway. If I see a big industrial facility, I'm like, ooh, I just want to get in there and see like what's up with all the pipes and the pumps and the tanks and the, reactors. And I don't know, that's what gets me excited more than like sitting at a beautiful dinner, having a bourbon pairing and talking to fancy people. Like I've come to love that as a part of the role that I have, but it, put me in some steel toes and set me in a distillery, and that's where I'm happiest.
To be successful in this business, you have to have a very sophisticated and sensitive palate. The ability to taste is so important. At what point in this internship did you start to realize, I can smell things other people can't? I can taste 10 different flavors and everybody else is tasting one. There's something really special going on.
I didn't realize it right away because when I started working for Brown-Forman, I was not a whiskey drinker. I was more of a rum drinker.
It's not the first
drinker.
qualification, like
right?
working there. Like,
I know.
Do you like
would
whiskey?
think, right? Yeah. So I was mostly just drinking fruity cocktails. Like I had not a sophisticated spirit palate at that point. But I was a particular...
You like hard seltzer? You daiquiris? What was your drink of choice?
But Captain Morgan and ginger ale and like a tequila sunrise. And I had no like idea that there were different types of tequila. I was like, yeah, just whatever. The one tequila that everybody drinks.
What's the house special today? I'm a college student.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I guess it hit me as I was being trained to be a taster. So they set up what they call a triangle test. So they put 2 samples that are different or the same and one that is different all in a line together. They put you in a room, where you're kind of separated by yourself, typically a red light on so you can't even see the difference in the color of the samples, and you go through and you're supposed to pick the one that's different. And sometimes they'll have just 1 set, sometimes they'll have 5 sets, but you go through and you pick the one that's different. And what they're trying to do is to evaluate if a general consumer could tell the difference. If they're changing a small ingredient, changing a process, just diluting a little bit more, like trying to get all this data. And they have to have a certain number of people participate to be able to get significant data. So all the time they're going across the company, like, make sure you go to the panel today, make sure you go to the panel today. But I was always like the first one in line because I just loved it so much. And I found that I was really good at it. I won a top tongue award. And a lot of times I could actually,
say
less. I know. And a lot of times I could actually identify the different one just through nosing. I didn't even have to get into tasting. Sometimes I would have to taste just to make sure. Because sometimes it would be like we added a little bit of salt or something like that, like just to test you.
At some point, did people start coming to you saying, what do you think about this? Or should this be more or less of X or Y?
Absolutely.
Like seeking your advice.
So when I was interning.
You're an intern, Marianne. You're an intern.
When I was interning, I did have the opportunity to move from their kind of consumer replicating panel to the expert panel, where we're now evaluating white dog and aged spirits to make sure that everything's going well out in the warehouse, how batching is going, just maintaining the consistent quality of all the products that they make. Because when you work at a big corporation like Brown-Forman with legacy brands like Jack Daniel's, the guy who's been drinking it for 40 years wants it to taste exactly like he remembers from 40 years ago. So that's the role of the expert panel, is to try to maintain that quality across, decades of production.
So did the job there continue for you at Brown-Forman, like well after the internship? Like internship is over and they clearly want to have you there. And you knew that too, that this is something pretty special.
It was cool. And I don't know that I took for granted that they were going to hire me, but they did. And I had I think it was an environmental science class that I needed to fulfill my degree. And they were like, all right, we're going to offer you this job. You have to take this class online. You actually do have to get your degree. But I got hired, just 1 semester before I actually graduated full-time there at Brown-Forman.
What are the biggest lessons that you learned there, not only about the industry, but about yourself?
Something that I really benefited from working for a big corporation was being pushed out of my comfort zone. So while I was working in a laboratory, they sent me into the production facilities. When you're there at Brown-Forman, it's a lot of interaction with other departments. As I was moving up into the master taster role, especially working with brand teams, with the marketing, with the salespeople, getting out into market. So working on those networking skills, but also my presentation skills. They put me through, press training. And those are some skills that still, they'll benefit me till the day that I, leave the mortal coil, I guess. But just having someone to push me out of my comfort zone, to encourage me to raise my hand for opportunities that are not typically just the lady job. So, when there was typically starting in a new cohort of interns, Nancy Warfield was the leader of the internship program. They're employed by Brown-Forman. And she was very conscious of diversity. And so hiring a lot of women and making sure that, because engineering is predominantly men.
Male dominated. Yeah.
So there was typically always one female in the mix in a cohort of 2 interns. My cohort partner is now the master distiller at Old Forester. So Caleb Piper was the one that I started my internship with. I'm so proud of him. What was I going to say? She, constantly she would be like, all right, we have 2 projects. We've got one in the lab, one out in the warehouse. Marianne, you're taking the one in the warehouse. Like, just going against the grain as much as possible. And then encouraging me, like, go join the employee resource groups, go to the Fun at 4 things, like network and let people know who you are and what you do. Because then you become the resource. Like you were saying, like people started coming to me and be like, oh, I know somebody in research and development. I met her at this, Fun at 4 thing for Tuaca that we had last week,
And all along the way, this is pushing you so far out of your comfort zone because you're inherently an introvert and you're shy and I'm good. Y'all come to me when you need me. I'm, going to be over here. And I think that's, especially in an industry like that, where you're probably looking around and you're realizing not a lot of people look like me. Mm-hmm. In that, it's a very, very male-dominated industry. How did you dig deep within yourself to start pushing yourself out? Because I think sometimes that feels so inherently awkward and weird, and we feel like we're going to fail. Like, what made you say, I am going to reach for every single opportunity that comes my way here, and I'm going to do it? Mm-hmm. Especially at that age. Totally. That's like a really tough age to like be advocating for yourself.
Yeah. I think that it helped that I was a little bit older. I had taken that time off, helped my mom open a business, started it and stopped it. So what did I say? Fail fast, fail early. So I had that under my belt. I do think that being a little bit older helped me. I had some life experience, but getting into those rooms and like telling people, especially I think also the project progression, going from the first internship to the second one to the third one, I was, more familiar with people across the organization. I was getting more responsibility in the roles that I had. And I think that confidence that I understood the job, understood the science behind it, and that just frankly, like I knew my stuff. And I knew what I had to contribute. So I think being invited into rooms where women typically weren't, I felt a responsibility to provide a different experience to these guys. So very early on, when I got hired at Brown-Forman, they put me in this kind of like management training pilot thing that they were doing. So nobody else had done it before. They had an opportunity over in the bottling operation. So managing 30 union employees. I am fresh out of college, like never really led a day in my life. But they put me over there. I'm now, again, in this union environment, and I have a fish out of water. I have no idea. Anything you touch can get a grievance filed against you.
Yes, you can.
And I pissed a lot of people off. And I worked all 3 shifts. I spent 6 months over there and learned so much about myself, but also like believing in my ability to grow in a new environment, to learn new things, to see things differently. So something that I have been told over and over in my career, especially at Brown-Forman, is nobody's ever asked that question before. And that's something I'm really proud about.
Well, obviously people saw your talent and they saw your gift because in a very short period of time, you were offered one of the biggest jobs of a lifetime, a job that I think most people would give their right arm for in the bourbon industry. And the decision that you made probably shocked people more than anything. So we're going to step into that big, bold decision. Pause for a break. We're coming right back. I grew up in a Ford family. My dad worked at the Louisville Ford assembly plant. So growing up, it wasn't just a brand, it was a part of our life. And that's the thing about Town and Country Ford. It is woven into the fabric of not only who we are in Kentucky, but who we are across America. So wherever life's adventures may lead you, big, small, or totally unexpected, they're there. Welcome back to the Best Bet podcast. I'm sitting down with Marianne Eaves, and she is kicking off this brand new season talking us through all the bold moves that she made in the bourbon industry to be the first female master distiller since Prohibition, but to do so in like a really male-dominated world. And Marianne, you were kind of taking us through how cool it was to land not only at Brown-Forman, but to be pushed into all these different lanes to learn and try. Like when you talk about like all the different places you were allowed to kind of seep and learn, it really kind of braced you for the next big step, right? It's in those weird moments. I don't think sometimes we realize this is prepping me for the next.
Absolutely.
So they come to you and say, we love what you're doing. We want you to be a master distiller. Of which brand?
Woodford Reserve. Yep.
Okay. The Woodford Reserve associated with the Kentucky Derby, right? One of the most notable brands like in all of the world. And what did you think of that?
I was really surprised because I had no idea that that's why he wanted to talk to me. So Larry Combs came to me. I was out in the pilot plant. I had just returned from this bottling management training thing that I had done. It kicked my butt, and I was just excited to be back to my like easy 9-to-5 gig. He comes to me and he says, come to my office in 15 minutes. This is somebody that was rungs above me on the ladder. I'm
oh my God,
okay.
I'm so in trouble.
Yeah,
this is it for me.
I was a little
fired.
nervous. Yeah. So I got to his office and, he's smiling. So I could breathe a little bit easier. And I just kind of like word vomit. Like, this is what I thought went great. This is what I thought the opportunities were. And he's like, oh, great. But what I really wanted to know is, do you want to be the next Woodford Reserve master distiller? He just said it just like that. And I
on a Tuesday.
Yeah, just
no
on a
big
Tuesday.
deal before you go to lunch.
Yeah. And it took my breath away. Like but pretty quickly I caught it. And before knowing like what a master distiller is, like I knew we had some master distillers. They're all old white guys. Yeah, I can do that. I think I would be really great at that job. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, all right, well, I'm going to set up a lunch with you and Chris and your boss and in R&D. And you can decide from there whether this is something that you think you could do.
Right. And then do you go home and go, oh my gosh, like seriously?
I called my dad.
Did you
like,
Google
Dad,
it? Okay. What are all the the job qualifications of? What do I got to do exactly?
Well, and it's another one of those things. I was like, I clearly can see the master distillers that were at Brown-Forman, the things that they do. And I'm really excited to learn more. And I know that I can learn this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so do you say yes or do you say no?
I said yes. I started training with Chris Morris for the time that I was there. We were so I achieved master taster under Chris Morris. That was in 2014. And then we were working together to develop the training program to become a master distiller. So he was like bouncing things off me. I was like, I think, you got to spend a couple months down at Jack, a couple months in Mexico working on tequila, a couple months over making the vodka that we make on the brand. And I was like, yes, I want to do all of this.
It's almost like a training program before. So you say yes to the job, but can you say, but I changed my mind later?
That's kind of what happened.
You did that?
So I was trained, I had got master taster. I was training, I was still protege to Chris Morris. So they were like, basically it wasn't like, do you want to be master distiller? It's when you want to be the next one. Mm-hmm. So Chris, it still has, a long runway out in front of him. And then this other opportunity falls in my lap.
They have to tee up the next person to study this and everything. But so while you're the master taster and while you're doing this and you're thinking, I don't want to look like I am passing up an opportunity or I'm not grateful, right? Like, I mean, being the first woman really in so many of these steps, it's like, I just want to thank everybody. It is so cool to be here. At what moment did another opportunity come your way? And it wasn't a pretty opportunity. And it could have been like the hardest job of your life. What made you look to the road less traveled and say, hold on, Woodford, I'm going to do this crazy move?
I felt, and this is the part of the story that's not as widely told, but I felt like I was losing touch with the technical side that I fell in love with. So like I said, put some steel-toed boots on me, put me in a distillery, and that's where I'm happiest. At that point in my journey at Brown-Forman, I was at least 50% of the time out in market, doing the dog and pony show, all the trainings and the tastings and the glamour.
It's a really glamorous side, I think, that people see
totally
to bourbon.
Totally. But, you know, and almost on a week, like sometimes a daily basis, but definitely on a weekly basis, my boss was coming to me and saying, all right, do you want to do R&D or do you want to do a master taster? And I kept saying, I want to do both. So I was honestly working 2 full-time jobs, like kind of running myself into the ground. But I was so passionate about both. I didn't want to lose either side of what I loved about the industry. And so once this other opportunity came to me, I was like, all right, this is maybe my chance to get back to the root of why I even joined the industry, like walking into this crazy jungle and cutting down the vines and like figuring out how to put the pieces of the puzzle back together and create something.
And the crazy opportunity that comes your way is in a dilapidated, abandoned distillery castle that doesn't even really have a formal brand attached to it that's been revitalized. And it's all concept. It's kind of one of those, hey, Marianne, this looks real ugly on the outside, but it's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome. And we like really want you here for it. Did you go seeking the Castle and Key opportunity, or did you feel like it stumbled upon you and just made you say, look, right here, this is the crazy chance you want?
Yeah, I was definitely not looking for anything at that time. I loved my job at Brown-Forman. I loved my team. They really felt like family to me. So when Wes and Will Arvin and Wes Murray, it was actually Wes Murray that reached out to me first. He said, you know, hey neighbor, we're just down the road from Woodford. We keep hearing your name. We'd love to kind of just show you around and introduce ourselves and tell you about what we're trying to do down here. So I was at work. I was like, great. It was the day before or the day after my birthday that year. I can't remember. But we had just had this ice storm. So I'm driving down McCracken Pike. It's like a winter wonderland. Like I've never seen it look so beautiful. I'm like, I don't know, is this a sign? And then turn the corner on McCracken and then there's a castle. And I felt like, how did I not know this was here? I've been working down at Woodford, just a stone's throw away. And anytime anybody ever mentioned Old Taylor, I was like, oh, it's clearly just like a rundown log cabin. Like nobody
going
told
on
me.
there.
Yeah, nobody told me it was a literal limestone castle. So I'm in awe of what I see, and it's spooky and beautiful. And we park across the street, and he starts walking me around. We see the sunken garden. They've already started working with John Karloftis and replanting the sunken garden, which I think was a really smart move. Like a lot of people dogged on them for that, but it was a way to give people a little bit of insight into what was happening in their mind, like where they saw it going.
Yeah.
They were going to bring it back just the way that Colonel E.H. Taylor had it in its heyday. So we're, walk through the warehouses. They're being like heavily worked on. So tons of wood being pulled out, just these massive piles of rotten pine and oak being built back up again. And then we head over to the distillery, which will be, my domain. Mm-hmm. And there's holes in the roof. The roof is collapsing. All the windows are broken out. There's lead paint, asbestos everywhere. All these old tanks are all, completely covered in rust. And
don't mind the progress here.
Yeah. They hadn't really started on that aspect of it. And they were already asking me questions like, you can see where the still is. Do you think we should put it back? Like, just like technical, like, I don't know if they were interviewing me. Maybe they were, and I didn't realize that they were. But I was like, yeah, I think, why broke something? Why fix it if it isn't broken? Yeah, they made the decisions for a particular reason. Like you don't have to gut it and start over. So we got back to the front of the distillery. Wes said it was the quickest tour he had ever given to date, because I was just, I don't know, I was either excited or I could see it.
He could have been totally nervous having you there. Yeah.
So we got out to the front, and I was like, well, congratulations. Good luck. If you need any help.
Good luck with this.
Yeah, I'm down here. I'll be doing my fancy job. And he said, well, wait, we actually wanted to know if you might be interested in joining the project. And I was like, well, it would take a lot. I'd said this to him. It would take a lot to get me to leave Brown-Forman. And very smartly, he looked at me and said, well, you aren't allowed to say no today.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you think when he said that?
I just said, oh, well, okay.
And did you let him know, look, I'm going to think about this and get back to you guys? Did you like have to get away to like do a little bit of soul searching before you made that decision?
Yeah. My dad in particular was very supportive of my career and very invested in me and my role at Brown Forman. Actually, when I told him that I got the role of master taster, when they offered me the job with Chris Morris, I took him out to Rye in downtown Louisville. And he was like, he started crying when I told him. And he said, honestly, Marianne, I thought you were going to tell me that you were pregnant. And then you ordered a drink, so I didn't know what it was about.
What's happening?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then, he was worried. He was like, how do you know that this is going to work out? And I guess I just felt like the good thing is I'm so young. Like if it doesn't work out, I'm going to be okay.
I think most people though, we love to pick the safe bet and we love to pick the thing that we think looks super impressive to the audience that we're always seeking to please. And that is sometimes, especially with social media, is so hard to like not compare and say, my life's not on track like that person, or this is a big deal and I owe it to name those people to keep like doing this, even though it doesn't feed my soul. And I'm always curious with people, and especially in your story, what was that nudge that said, this is going to be totally fine, Marianne, and you're going to do things that you've never thought possible? Did you feel that nudge? And did you know in your heart to like trust that nudge and what your gut was telling you?
I really did feel almost called to Castle and Key. Like it needed someone that wasn't afraid of the Herculean task that it was going to be to bring it back to life. And I don't know, maybe it was because I didn't have as much experience as everybody else who had like passed up the project before. And the guys who were starting it had no beverage experience. They're like, all right, you start tomorrow. We'll have it up in 9 months, right? And I was like, yeah,
not quite.
Sounds possible. Yeah, let's shoot for that.
Sure.
And then we hire the pipe fitters and they were like, sorry to burst your bubble, ma'am, but definitely not 9 months. But we had such incredible partners that I was able to walk through, this process together. And I, with my different lens and my engineering background, would bring things to them that, after working for distilleries and for 50 years, they were like, nobody's ever thought to do it this way. I'm like, well, we're going to do it that way. And even like the guy.
So hold up, you're like doing every possible job. You just don't have one job at Castle and Key. You have meet with the pipe fitters. Is the landscaping in on time? Who fed the cat? Like you're literally like have your hands in absolutely everything.
Yes, absolutely.
That's wild. Yeah. So you must have loved that.
It was definitely one of the most exciting things about the opportunity to me is to have the chance to build it, to build a business from the ground up, to create my own legacy from the ground up, to have total control over how things were constructed. Like I think that's one thing also that stuck out to my business partners when I first, stepped on the property. We're having a meeting with this engineering firm. They've laid out what they think is the perfect design. And I'm like, we're going to change this, change that. Like, let's look at this differently. And I saw them out of the corner of my eye, like look at each other and almost like pat each other on the back. Like we did a good
young girl
thing here.
Doesn't know anything. This girl doesn't know anything. When did you realize that you were the first female master distiller since Prohibition?
Yeah.
Obviously they didn't roll that title out first to you. They kind of said, you're going to do all this. When did that come into reality for you? And did being the first female master distiller since Prohibition feel like, oh, wow, success? Or did it feel like pressure?
That was one of the most challenging aspects of the move to Castle and Key. And I didn't realize that it was going to be, because when they were talking to me about the role, we're hiring for a master distiller. I was like, okay, I'm the master distiller. But what ended up happening, so Chris Morris was the first one I spoke to at Brown-Forman when I knew that it was a possibility that I would leave. When we spoke, I hadn't like signed an employment agreement or anything. It was not set in stone. I could have stayed had they had the right offer, I guess, counter offer. But I set a meeting with Chris, walked into his office, and I said, I just felt like you should be the first one to hear it from me, that this is what's happening. And he was so shocked and I think upset, disappointed that I wasn't going to stay at Brown-Forman for 50 years, that he just stood up from his desk, didn't say another word, opened the door and let me out. And the next day, I think that was Friday. And then of course there's like a flurry.
Like that had to feel like such an ouch.
Yeah. And we haven't spoken since then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, of course there was a flurry of like HR meetings and things that day. And my boss that had just left before me had worked through his 2 weeks. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to have 2 weeks of work before I can start at this other job. They let me go that day, like security escort out. And I got to Castle and Key the next day and they were like, yeah, the president of the Kentucky Distillers Association called. He said, Chris is really mad. And they were like trying to.
It's like you got called to the principal's office on the first day of school.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Wow.
He was like, Eric called us and he said, I don't know how you did it, guys, but congratulations.
Are you in trouble at this point?
I feel like I've been in trouble with the KDA for a while, maybe even still today. They might have a wanted poster with my face on it. Yeah. The reward paid by Chris Morris. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and you have to keep doing a job and you just like, I've still got to do a really good job. And how do you like get that noise out of your head to stay on course and to stay on path and not doubt yourself? And I know that can't be easy because we all have days where it's like, we let that criticism and that the naysayers get to us. And I'm like, from personal experience, I'm like, don't do that. How did you kick that stuff out so you could do a kick-ass job at this new opportunity?
The fortunate thing is that Castle and Key kind of felt like it was in the middle of nowhere and we hardly had running water. Like the only way to go to the restroom at that time was to drive up the road and go to Cracker Barrel or Starbucks, for the ladies at least. What helped me in that initial period, so the KDA, they called Will and West. I said, Chris is really mad and what are you going to call her? Because you can't call her master distiller.
But why not?
Because it's a fraternity. Like I hadn't been knighted by the old man before
me. I mean, are you serious? Is there like a ceremony?
No.
Okay. You're making that up?
But that's what that's the way they felt. Yeah.
You can't be in this club.
No, this is not for girls.
Well, who says?
Exactly.
Like who's making the rules?
Exactly. There was no written rule. There just had never been one. So they came to me, they told me this and they were like, it's kind of up to you whether you stick your neck out and on the guillotine, I guess. So, or the guillotine. So I was kind of considering like the options. Like, am I the distillery manager? Am I operations manager? Actually, the guy that asked me whether I wanted to be the Woodford Reserve master distiller called me to ask, like, are you ready for this? And I was like, you thought I was ready at your company. Like, why is it different now? Why,
right.
Why,
I was ready for that job.
What is it about this that people think is beyond me? But so we hadn't released like what my title was going to be yet. We hadn't even really put out the first press release about me joining the team or the name, because they wanted to wait until the distillery was named. And then Fred Minnick got to it before I could. So he was at a Bourbon Classic event in downtown Louisville doing a panel with all the existing master distillers, which are a bunch of white dudes. And he's standing there at the podium and he said, I have an announcement. There's a new master distiller in the state of Kentucky and her name is Marianne Eaves.
Whoa.
And so he announced it. And then I had to decide whether I was going to step into it or like, oh no, Fred misspoke. Like I'm clearly not the master distiller. So I knew that to not step into it would have been a disservice, not only to myself, but every woman that came after me. And I was doing the job. And like Jimmy Russell, for example, been in the seat for 70 years now, 60 years now, master distiller. His son and I were on that same panel the next year. And he said, Eddie said to me, he said, my dad was really surprised when you decided to leave Brown-Forman, but he honestly believes that you are doing what every true master distiller wants to do.
You are.
Build their legacy for themselves.
You are. Absolutely. That had to be a terrifying time. Like that had to be both empowering and had to be terrifying, that we're taught not to step on too many toes, right? We're taught to go to the meetings, file the reports, show up on time. But when you realize you're going to piss off a lot of people by just doing a good job.
Yeah.
And you say, well, here we go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also the challenge was I had this role of master distiller. Yeah. The distillery was not operational, but if people could see, and I am working on telling, my story, but I think that if people had the opportunity to get that lens into what I was doing there every day for those years that it took to get it open to the public, to get the product on, in the barrels, in the warehouse, like they would not question, either the talent or the dedication or the just hard work grind that it took to earn my title.
Oh, you earned it. How long were you at Castle and Key?
So I started there in the beginning of 2015 and I left in 2019. So it was 4 years.
What was the calling that happened while you were there? Because there again, people would say, you've got it great. This is so cool. This is what you wanted. You've built something from ground up. You have a say in it. What started nudging at you again? What is your gut speaking up and saying, let's do something else?
Everything changed. It was like the after it was open to the public and we had to start acting more like a real company, things got harder. So I was one of 4 owners in the business, 3 of owners that were there on the site every day. Once the distillery was up and operating, I had put myself on night shift. Just because I knew that if I wasn't working night shift, I would be called all night anyway, because I had a very inexperienced team that I loved. I loved creating the processes and training them on the ways to do it. But if I had had the opportunity and the owners were willing to invest a little bit more and folks with more experience, I wouldn't have been on the trajectory to burn out quite as much as I was.
Because it had to be exhausting.
It was exhausting. So I can clearly remember there were days that I would go into the distillery at 1 a.m. and be there until 3 or 4 p.m. and have to, go home, try and sleep in the basement and with no lights and come back, at 1 a.m. the next day. And often when I was there later into the afternoon, it was to host a group. So I've already been there all day and I'm trying to, turn it on for these people that are there to pick a single barrel. And there were a couple times, and it took me off guard every time it happened, but it's just like pure exhaustion. So we finished it up. They've selected their barrel. They're going back to like have a fun drink and shop at the gift shop. And I'm kind of trailing behind the group and just sobbing, like just overcome with exhaustion. Like I can't keep doing this, but I had to, because there was nobody else to do it. And I think what changed for me eventually when I got to the end of the line with Castle and Key was I realized that I had kind of lost my seat at the table in making decisions, because there was so much divide between the 2 founding partners, which now there's only, one of the original founders that owns the company solely. So there's not that issue anymore. But I felt like I was more aligned with the vision of the partner that left. He didn't leave until after I left. And I guess when I came to the end of the road, I felt like I was being led in a direction where I lost my passion for it. And I did believe that there's more out there for me than just working for one brand. I think like looking more broadly at global spirits, getting involved in it in a different way. But honestly, I did not have a next step planned when I left Castle and Key. I just knew that I was losing myself and my passion, and I had to make a change.
And in that change, do you think just taking the break and being still kind of brought you to the next biggest question was, why don't I just do a brand myself?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I had met the the founding partners of the Forbidden brand while I was still working at Castle and Key. So they reached out to me. That was very early on as I was transitioning away from Brown-Forman, before we announced that I was master distiller, before the name announcement, before we started the stills. I was just working in the laboratory, like figuring out what kind of corn we were going to use for the Castle and Key product.
The exciting parts of
the exciting
bourbon
part.
business.
Yeah.
What kind of corn are we
And
going
I
to use?
remember like I had my little iPhone like set up on the shelf, like trying to record myself making these little lab mashes. If anybody cares to dig back into the depths of my Facebook, you'll find these little laboratory videos. I'm like, here, I'm putting in the corn and the rye. And I was, you know, it's just an exciting time. So in 2016, I started developing the recipe for these guys out of South Carolina. I moved on eventually. We distilled it first in 2018. I moved away from Castle and Key in 2019. And then 2020, we started production at Bardstown Bourbon Company. But between those two times, I didn't know if I wanted to be associated with anything that had been produced at Castle and Key. It was still very raw, everything that had happened, everything, you know, but they were very convincing. They're, you know, South Carolina, Southern gentlemen. They were very patient and very, very persuasive. One of my primary business partners is the mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. So he knows how to, you know, move the needle, I guess.
Does. Knows how to sell the story.
Knows how to sell the story.
Knows how to get everybody in line
Yes.
and get everybody on board.
Yes.
What story did you want to tell with Forbidden?
So initially when I joined the team, we were worried that the word forbidden would maybe feel too harsh, too masculine for the nuance, like product that I was trying to create for them. But eventually it really did come to embody, I think, my story. So actually in the Kentucky law books, it's written, women can't be hired in a distillery as anything but a cashier, a waitress, or an usher. That law existed until 1974 when it was repealed. So legally forbidden from doing the job that I was doing back in those days.
And so why not?
Yeah.
Why not embrace Forbidden in that way? And it just seems like perfect that you would be associated with that after everything you'd gone through.
And I didn't want to be totally separated from what I had built at Castle and Key. So this gives me a way separately on my own 2 feet to still honor all of that time and blood and sweat and tears.
And at what point did you realize, okay, Forbidden, it's off. It's my gift, my baby to the world, that it was time then to take another turn and to do something else?
So Forbidden is still my primary baby, but I do also do consulting. So I've worked on actually the first job that I took. Let's see, how should I say it? It's a like project that I took when I left Castle and Key, was working with this woman named Lindsay Hoops out in California, in Napa. She owned Hoops Vineyard, still owns Hoops Vineyards, but they had lost their 2017 production crop to fires. So we had met at the last event that I did at Castle and Key, which featured women of Napa, only female chefs. Sam Four was one of those, and she came to me and she was like, I just feel like I'm about to lose everything, but I love peaty whiskey and I love wine, and I feel like there's got to be some kind of way to cross over. So I met her out in Napa. We set up my little laboratory stills in her kitchen and their estate, and we started distilling some of these smoke-affected grapes and came out with some really interesting prototypes. We haven't launched that one yet, but that was the first project that I took, and it was really life-giving working with another woman. We were both pregnant at the same time.
Yeah.
Like it just felt like the world brought.
Smoke-affected grapes? What is that?
So when the wildfires out in California, all that smoke in the air, it actually attaches to and seeps into the fruit.
Oh, wow.
So when they harvest it,
what do you do?
It has an ashy kind of characteristic. So a lot of people since that first time, you know, they were trying to salvage it. They were trying to still make wine, but Lindsay knew that if she put that smoky product in a bottle, because they had sent it through the whole process, put it in the fancy $3,000 barrels, like when it came time to bottle it, they didn't catch it initially, but when it came time to bottle it, they were like, oh, wow, yeah, no, this is
And that's not even
really
something,
smoky.
it's smoky, you can't even sell it. So it's a total loss.
Yeah, they didn't want it to impact the perception of their brand negatively.
Right.
So they just kind of like put it in totes and said, we don't know what we're going to do with it.
What do we do with it? Bring Marianne out.
Yep.
Maybe she can figure out what to do with this.
Yeah, but that smoky quality is actually really nice in whiskey. So yeah, so creating a smoked brandy, which up until then had not existed. It's like, if mezcal, is it mezcal to tequila or Scotch to bourbon or Scotch to, single malt.
Do you expect to go more in this direction, or are there like other new projects that you're teeing up as we step into the new year?
Definitely new projects that I'm teeing up. I've gotten involved with a rum out of Florida. They're a really cool brand called the Otherland Society, female-owned, female-run sugarcane farm down there around Lake Okeechobee. I hope to have the chance to build the distillery for them. But I've blended a product for them. They're also involved with Michelin. So we just had our launch of the South with the Michelin Guide. Forbidden was involved. They were involved with the launch in Florida. So I got to do that with Otherland Society. I think that the next step for me is outside of spirits. So I had been looking in non-alc areas because there are so many spirit alternatives, but none that are super successful, and definitely none that are like, if you picked it up, you're like, oh, wait, is this bourbon? No, it never tastes like bourbon.
It never does. No.
They're always meant for mixing. So I want to create something that you can just sip neat.
Yeah.
That's like a spirit alternative that you could drink in all the ways that people that truly appreciate whiskey would drink it. That's a later thing.
And we're in Kentucky, where it does feel forbidden to even talk about something that is non-spirits related. But there is something shaping up I have seen throughout the country in people's drinking habits and their health habits, where it's just, this is not a daily thing that we're going to go reach for an alcoholic beverage anymore. Especially many women are waking up to the fact that, okay, this is not really jiving with my body right now. That's like a reality. Younger people are not embracing alcohol the way that they wanted it. And it's not a bad thing, but it's like, there's got to be room at the table for more alternatives that taste really good.
Agreed. Yeah. And so that's what I'm working on right now. And I think the next step for me is outside of bourbon, a spirit kind of, really it's a drink additive.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about it much publicly, but I'm really excited about the opportunity and women being the primary audience, getting to bring more of my friends, my female friends to the table in this industry that also have a different lens. One is an herbalist, also a master distiller, that I think, just understanding women's bodies.
Yeah.
And what these different things can do for us and our mood and our vitality and libido and,
Because we're just seeking different ways. I want to live longer. I want to feel good.
Exactly.
I want to enjoy life.
Exactly.
But I can't pretend that Wind Down Wednesday really works for me. Right?
Totally. And we don't have to get rid of Wind Down Wednesday.
No,
just maybe keep it to Wednesday.
Keep it just to Wednesday. This can't be a wind down every night.
Yes.
Or, tossing back, a bourbon every day. There has to be some balance in that, or you're not going to sleep.
Totally.
Right? You're not going to sleep. You're not going to sleep well, and you're not going to be doing great things to your body. Yes. One way that you really have brought people to the table and made sure that underrepresented communities have a voice in this industry is through the Eaves Foundation. And I wanted to ask you about that and, what it is and why you felt like that was just like your eternal way of giving back, a project that will always be there.
The Eaves Foundation was born actually kind of right in line with when Forbidden was launched. And I am still funding the endowment. So it hasn't actually produced a scholarship yet, but it will. But the hope is definitely to add to the diversity of the people in our industry. What I was trying to do with the Eaves Blind Project during COVID was get people looking at bourbon differently just through the diversity of geography.
Yeah.
So it's not just Kentucky. It can be made anywhere in the United States. And as people become open to the notion of bourbon can be made anywhere, it can also be made by anyone and it can be consumed by anyone. So I think, these small steps, as things happen slowly in Kentucky, the bourbon ages slowly, our minds change a little bit slowly. So again, just approaching it in a thoughtful way, but also meaningfully move the needle for folks who, have a hard time finding an open door.
I think it takes, though, a couple of us, though, to stand up and say, hey, I love Kentucky. I want to be here. I want things to move forward. I want to see a different face associated with this or that. It just takes a couple of people doing that to really shake things up. So my signature question for you as we wrap things up, let's say I'm invited to your Kentucky table. Who are you inviting to your Kentucky table? Name 3 people. And what are you eating and what are you drinking? And who would you love to break bread with and share a meal?
That's a great question. Kentuckians, bringing other Kentuckians to the table?
Kentuckians, or even it could be anybody from around, the South or your travels out West that you think kind of unite us all.
I think the woman in Napa that I mentioned, Lindsay Hoops, she's a fascinating woman. I would always have her at my table because she's bringing the wine. We're drinking hoops.
There's your wine down Wednesday.
There's
right
my
there.
wine down Wednesday. Yeah. Yeah. So Lindsay Hoops would always have a seat at my table. Other people that I would include, and we're saying anybody.
Anybody. Your Kentucky table, your rules.
Perfect. So 2 other people that I would bring. It's tough because
you want to add more people,
I'm like
don't
seeing
you?
so many faces. I'm like, there are a lot of people that I would bring. I've had some really special humans in Lexington. Samantha Four is one that I would always also have at my table because she brings the snacks.
Yep. Really good snacks.
Really good snacks. And she downplays it by calling them snacks. But she had me over to her house for one of her first brunch, a Sunday brunch kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, teaching people to eat with their hands. And I just thought it was so cool, letting me have a little bit of an insight into what it was like growing up as her.
What a story she has.
Absolutely.
Would you save the 3rd seat at the table for somebody that you've not yet met that you admire?
Oh,
Would that be, and then learn something in the process?
that's a great idea. Ooh, who would that be?
Totally put you on the spot. Limited seats at the table.
Yeah. We've got one more seat at the table.
Who is catching your eye, and they don't even have to be in the spirit space, but somebody that is really catching your eye is doing things differently and in a way that just makes you want to push yourself harder.
There is another woman in the spirits industry, and we have been on parallel paths kind of in the same space for a long time. And I got to meet her for the first time as a part of this new documentary project that I'm involved with. So the Spirit of Women. Leah Kingsley is the director and producer of that documentary, but she brought us all together. We did an event at Maker's Mark, and Mel Heim created a brand called Big Nose Kate. And it's a story of this badass Western woman that people discounted. And that is the person that she decided to embody when creating her Western whiskey. She's got some really cool business partners. Melissa McCarthy is one. But Mel Heim, I feel like we had small interactions, but there was always a lot of warmth between us. But getting to meet her in person, I'm like, I feel like you're my sister. And she has got this incredible vision for kind of like what I'm doing with the foundation, but even bigger, how to take the industry back for women. So I mentioned that Fred Minnick is the one that announced me as Kentucky's first female master distiller. He wrote a book. I would say it's the book right now on the history of women in the whiskey industry globally. But it really is women who were running the industry. And when it fell down the first time, it was women that saved it. So we might be on a loop here where it's going to be women that have to save the industry again. And I think Mel is the one that has the vision to bring that all together. So
amen. That's a pretty good Kentucky table right there. Well, Marianne, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching the podcast. If you felt inspired, please leave a comment, send this over to a friend, and don't forget to subscribe and get the word out. If you're following over on Instagram, be sure to follow the Best Bet Pod for all the behind the scenes action. And you can catch us on all the other streaming platforms from Spotify to Apple. And if you're on Apple, please leave a 5-star review because that's how I can get the word out about the podcast. So until then, I'll see you right back here next week.